Hey guys, what's up? What's going on? Mike here with a quick intro to the podcast. Most importantly, we want to thank you guys for listening because we broke 40,000 listens last week, which is pretty cool. So thank you for not getting sick of us yet, and keep it up, tell a friend, rate and review, you know the deal. We have a sort of half announcement to make this week, so I'll spare you the usual advertisements, and we'll definitely let you know the full details as we get closer to the release. But for now, I can say we're going to be adding a new program under the How Many Fingers banner, which will be an Oscar prediction video series available exclusively on our YouTube page. Oscar season is fast approaching, so we'll be dropping the first installment in the next few weeks. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Just search How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up on YouTube, or find the direct link on howmanyfingerspodcast.com. This week, we've got Constable Cass of the Nuclear Heat podcast helping us review Night School. Nuclear Heat is a great wrestling podcast. We already had Rob Goodman on our review of The Predator 2 weeks ago. So if you like that episode, or if you like this episode, definitely check them out at nuclearheatpodcast.com. But first, our drunk review of Night School. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Joe.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, the podcast. And this week, we're reviewing Night School.
They should put this movie in detention.
Oh, that was good.
Thank you.
Welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, featuring two guys getting to know each other and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
Aw, thank you.
That's so cute.
Thank you, Tara Canetti. Tara Canet?
Tara Canet. It's a synonym queen. She's submitted probably the most synonyms of anyone that we've had.
And I still can't
she
get her
early.
name right. Sorry, Tara.
That's a synonym for getting drunk, is getting to know each other?
Getting to know each other.
I like that.
Getting to know each other in the biblical sense.
We're really far up there in the episode count, so people have to get creative now.
But if you have further creative synonym suggestions, you can suggest those on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, MySpace, Friendster, anywhere pretty much that you can find us.
We don't have
We're
an
not on
account
MySpace. That was a weird lie.
I just want to feel alive.
I usually like to say I'm fucking destroying things when I'm getting drunk.
That's your drunk.
So I'm
you should
fucking
submit.
destroying all these beers right now is pretty much it.
There we go. But let us delay no further. Betwixt us, again for the first time on the podcast, Constable Cass from the Nuclear Heat podcast.
Ba, 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 ba.
Yeah. We had your co-host Rob Goodman on 2 weeks ago for the Predator review.
I listened. It was terrible.
Don't listen to it. It was awful.
He's so boring.
This is going to be much better. Yeah, so we're going to drink a beer that Rob graciously brought for us and Cass graciously brought for us. This is the Bull Abides beer from Bolero Snort, which is a oatmeal stout, or is it a coffee stout? I don't think it
Milk
is.
stout?
Imperial stout with coffee, vanilla, cocoa, and milk sugar added. Milk sugar, not milk and sugar.
I will try it.
Milk sugar.
It is delicious.
But also, tell us about the Nuclear Heat podcast. I mean, I know we've already gone through it, but I want to hear.
For those who didn't listen 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
For those of you that didn't want to hear about Predator, I don't know why you wouldn't listen. It was such a good movie. Nuclear Heat Podcast, it's a wrestling comedy podcast where we try to stay on topic about wrestling, but we end up talking about some kind of 80s television show. I think that's been on every week. Music, movies, we talk about how much we hate wrestling. So yeah, Rob loves wrestling and he tries to rein us in, and it's really fun.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's good.
And where can people find the Nuclear Heat podcast?
It's at nuclearheatpodcast.com, and then on Twitter, it's at Nuclear Heat Pod, or more importantly, Constable Cast.
You're that personal follow.
Yes. I created my own Twitter so that I could pester Rob, who does the Twitter, and he is not a fan. But now I think I'm way more popular than our main Twitter, so that's what I'm going to promote. And then we have a Facebook. We don't really use it because none of us want to go on Facebook, but it's also Nuclear Heat Podcast and Instagram as well, Nuclear Heat Podcast.
Nice.
Cool.
Definitely give all those a follow.
Yeah.
This week, what are we doing? What movie are we diving
I'm going to take
into
a sip of this beer real quick.
Have you not tasted yet? Yeah, I don't know.
It's good.
I hope this shows up on camera, but this is great artwork here. It's a Big Lebowski reference. The Bull Abides.
They have really good
Bolero
artwork
Snort, which has like a bull in there.
on all their beers. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had anything from, what is this brewery?
Bolero
Bolero
Snort.
Snort.
No, yeah.
I can't remember what
good.
they have like a main IPA. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Can't either. We usually just get their specialty beers because they release a fuck ton. They're all delicious.
Oh, yeah. All right, I'll have to check it out. Are they from New Jersey or?
I think they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aren't they? Rob? I don't know.
I believe so. Yeah, I don't know where in New
Yeah.
Jersey. All right, let me get this IMDb description, and then Joe has some.
But what are we reviewing?
Did you do your homework for
Hey
night
guys,
school?
what are we reviewing this week?
Night school.
Thanks.
It would also be in the intro, Joe.
Oh, Jesus. Stupid idiot.
According to IMDb, night school is a group of troublemakers are forced to attend night school in hope, not in hopes, in hope that
Only
they'll
one of
pass
them
the
is
GED
hoping.
exam to finish high school.
Singular hope.
In hope, one hope. They're all hoping together.
Oh, jeez. Okay. So Night School is directed by Malcolm D. Lee. Malcolm has directed a lot. He's directed The Best Man, Undercover Brother, Roll Bounce, which was the roller skating movie
Yes, Roll Bounce.
with Nick Cannon and Bow Wow. Yes.
Little Bow Wow. You just don't know.
He's also directed Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins, Soul Men, Scary Movie 5, The Best Man Holiday, Barbershop The Next Cut, and Girls Trip.
Wow. When I saw this movie, I was like, this must be this guy's first effort. Because
I know, it's kind of
but
sad.
some of those movies were good. Like
I know. Dude, I didn't see Girls Trip until recently. I think this year, even though it was a very big movie last year. I'm kind of a little disappointed.
Really well reviewed last year.
Yeah, we got caught up in a bunch of other, again, with this kind of like we see 3 movies and then we review them all in like one day. So we kind of have to like decide like an entire month of movies in like one day, kind of.
one of the children is not going to make it.
Right, yes. It's Sophie's choice.
Yes.
We had to pick 3 of these kids, and there's like 12.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sad that we didn't pick Girls Trip, because that was kind of like a very big box office surprise. It was, it did so well. It made so much money, and it was so well received and everything. And then I watched it. I think it's on HBO Go
It's
still.
on HBO, yeah.
And I was like very pleasantly surprised. I laughed the entire time. It's got the feels. It's got everything that you want from one of these movies. Again, I think he's done a lot of good stuff, but Girls Trip has to be like the best thing he's directed. It's very far from this movie, very far removed from this movie. But if I can attribute any sort of evidence of why this movie was bad, this movie was written by Kevin Hart, Harry Ratchford, Joey Wells, Matthew Kellard, Nicholas Stoller, and John Hamburg. So there's a lot of people who have their hands in this movie.
I feel like there was probably a lot more writers too that they did not get credit.
Right.
It was crazy. It was all over.
Yeah, I mean, you have like the latter two, the Nicholas Stoller and John Hamburg, who I think have pretty lengthy experience comedic film writing for movies, like comedic films, rom-coms, you name it. And then I think the 3 before that are kind of just from Kevin Hart's camp. who are kind of like, oh, they're listed as writers for like different specials he's done, or
Yeah.
like I think he had like Kevin Hart had like a comedy troupe in Philly called like the Plastic Cup Boys. I think Joey Wells was like a part of that, and then again Kevin Hart. I'm
I was
sure,
gonna say it's probably people he bounces ideas off of,
right? Yeah,
and then that gives him credit.
This whole movie does kind of feel like if you ever watched any of the Kevin Hart comedy specials, he has like those intros and outros
yes,
to it where it's like an actual like skit
we,
filmed. It kind of seems like making a whole movie out of one
Yeah,
of those. Like,
I think
they're not funny.
Yeah.
They're funny, but it's clearly like I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a college student making a movie with who has money to make a movie.
well, it also kind of looks like a skit that you would have during like a BET or like Emmy or like Oscar,
Yeah,
like, you know, like
the
it's kind of
MTV
like,
movie
yeah, like
awards or
MTV,
something.
yeah, where it's kind of, we watched like Kevin Hart's, one of his stand-up specials at your like last apartment, and like we had to watch like literally 10 or 15 minutes of like this Casino Royale like parody.
Yep.
Before like he got into doing stand-up, and it was just kind of like an excuse for him to
It sounds
like,
like it was probably really fun to make.
yes.
this.
It was just like a really great excuse for like Kevin Hart to like have like Halle Berry on his arm and to like do like a bunch of like James Bond spoofs or whatever.
Yeah, I really thought it felt like an episode of like a comedy TV show that they were like, well, we can make a whole movie out of this. This is the whole idea. And it felt like at parts there was like a little Saved by the Bell-ish, and I was like, this is why is this like this?
You know what I thought of when I was watching this movie? It was kind of like, you know, like the Key and Peele skit that went viral, kind of, where it was the teacher.
Aaron.
Yeah, the teacher like mispronouncing like all these white kids' names and everything. And like a studio bought the rights to that to make that
Yes.
into a movie. I was like, when they were doing there's like a fucking really long scene in this movie where everybody's like being like, hey, my name's so-and-so.
Oh, yeah.
And this is my whole
Life.
fucking character spiel, background, exposition, everything.
Yeah.
And it ended, it was like a 12-minute scene.
Like,
it
should
was just
we
like, I was
have-
like, this is what that Key and Peele
Yeah.
movie would look like. I don't know if it's still being made, but this
Yeah.
is what it would look like.
It's like they didn't want to do character development on anybody else, but they wanted people to have backstories. So they're like, I don't know, let them say who they are.
Right, yeah.
Give them each 5 minutes.
They dragged out most scenes in this movie where it seemed like it was just like Kevin Hart and everyone on set having fun and maybe riffing a little bit and just being like, oh, what if your character, because she's this stereotype, says this?
Yeah.
And what if your character, because he's this Mexican stereotype, says this? Like, and it wouldn't even necessarily always make sense for the actual characters that showed up on screen.
Yeah.
But it was just there's a lot of stereotypes in this movie.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
probably my first complaint that I want to say.
Yeah,
that-
I had that down.
That's why I feel, I mean, just like because of what you said, that's why I feel like this writer's list is so long. And they're like, hold on, what is your name, Joey Wells? Like, I'm just gonna put you down for the credits.
Just a bunch of people in a room just shouting out ideas.
No, like on set, like shouting out, like, "Hey, one of these like a Spanish stereotype." Okay, yeah, no, let's continue with that.
and in that way, it reminded me of like a lot of the like Vine skits that we used to see, like
Yeah.
either on Vine or from people from Vine making skits afterwards. Like, who's the one guy with the big hair? No, not him. He would be in some of them, but there was the guy who did like the Mexican gardener stereotype in his skits, and then they would do skits where they would have like all these people of different races playing stereotypes of their races, and that's
It was
what
like
a lot of parts of this
King
movie.
Batch and his
Yes,
like,
yes, yes.
crew of cronies.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, all right, guys, I've gathered you here all today
Yeah.
to like sell out your culture. Let's
You all get 6 seconds, and we need 111 minutes.
say the most racist shit you can think about your parents. You know, like
Like, that's what I didn't like about like the Mexican waiter character here, because like
oh man,
like they do give him like somewhat of a backstory in terms, not a backstory, but a motivation, I guess, and that he wants to be like this Justin Bieber singer character. But a lot of his humor ends up coming from like
we can understand him in 99% of the line, but when they want a punchline,
Yep.
he can't pronounce hyenist or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like this whole thing. So we can understand him
Justin Bieber.
perfectly the rest of the movie, but whenever they want a punchline, it's because he can't pronounce something because he's Mexican.
It's weird because he's fine during like that initial scene where he's like the waiter and everything, and he's can understand him completely, and he's making the most logical point in this scene. But it's and then
give him a G to pronounce.
Right,
it's all over.
Yeah, and it's kind of like all of a sudden, like we bring him back, and he's a completely different character once we have to introduce him to the audience.
And he's literally he's saying shit like Holmes, and like it's all like Comedy Central, like mid 2000s, like bad stereotypes that have been really like played out. There's a lot about this movie that feels very dated, despite there's a lot of great laughs in this movie, but there's just a lot of concepts that are very dated.
So bad.
As well.
Some like really like out of nowhere like fart jokes that they're like
they stoop pretty low.
This movie's for like a 35-year-old. There's no 13-year-old boys watching this movie in the theater. Like
I
we
did
don't
to
need
say
this fart
my
joke.
theater loved this movie.
Oh my god, mine too, yeah.
They were so vocal about it, and as I was walking out, I heard so many people literally out loud being like, "That was great! Like that was so funny."
There was
people who were like talking about how they were like speechless about how funny it was.
A handful of people went and bought tickets to see it again immediately afterwards. What
a fucking oh man. I can't think of a better, like, walking out of the theater, like, walking back up to the fucking...
Again, please.
Yeah, hit me! Yeah. I'm gonna see this tomorrow, same time, same fucking place. I left that movie, and I haven't stopped thinking about it.
The janitor's trying to kick him out, and he's like, no, I'm here for the next screening.
Oh, man. I can't think of a higher praise for like a movie. I know like beautiful lifetime achievement movies that people are like, yeah, that was a really great movie.
But I never want to see it.
They don't circle back around into the ticket booth and are like, one more please. Like it's a fucking Six Flags ride.
Yeah, and like that's where I kind of feel torn about this movie, because like, I mean, part of it is being in the same theater as these people who are laughing the entire time, having a great time.
How do you say this is bad?
It was an enjoyable experience to see this movie, but I'm also seeing some of these scenes where I'm like, oh, okay, like that makes me cringe a little bit. That feels a little bit dated and a little bit offensive. Or just like cheap shots, like you're saying. Like there's a lot of like toilet humor in this, where it's like, okay,
or like weird, like
you had nowhere else to go, so
cartoonish
she farts in this
explosions.
scene.
Like this isn't a cartoon. Why is he flying through the air through a windshield and he's not hurt?
It definitely
I think
seems
there's something inherently funny about like tiny Kevin Hart being like, and like landing on the roof. I did laugh at that. I'm sorry. Sue me.
It just,
I just
even if it's funny, it just felt odd in some parts.
My gosh.
None of the parts of the movie
didn't
fit
feel
together.
Like it fit, yeah.
There's a lot of scenes that are only made funny because it's Kevin Hart, because he's such a great like performance artist.
You want
of
to
comedy.
like him so much.
He can take any like line of dialogue and find like the funniest way to deliver it.
Rosebud.
And it's not like he's playing different characters. He's Kevin Hart in every movie, but like we love Kevin Hart's personality.
Yeah, I think in my
As
notes
American
I only wrote him
audiences.
down as Kevin Hart. Like I can't see him with a different name. He's Kevin Hart.
Yeah, this is you know what there's a bunch of offensive shit in here. There's a bunch of like weird themes that are all battling against each other, but I think this film's biggest crime is that it's just like the laziest film of all time. It's just it's kind of like, I actually really enjoyed that. Like I know I use it as an example, but that scene where everybody's kind of like giving their whole spiel and being like, hey, this is my character, I'm funny because so-and-so, yada, yada, yada. Like, I did enjoy that scene. But there are scenes where you can tell, like, it's just kind of like, in a normal film, they would be like, all right, Kevin, Tiffany, you know, you guys go back and forth, yada, yada, yada. We'll pick out all the best parts, and that will be the scene. This movie was like, why cut any of it? Let's just have it all play,
Yeah.
you know? And it was just kind of like, especially that kind of like scene that kind of keeps coming up where they'll kind of be like, they'll kind of just do like facial expressions like back and forth at each other. And it's kind of like, it's funny for 3 or 4, you know? But
20
they'll go to
20
like,
minutes later.
you go, right, yeah, they'll go on and on and on and on, where you can see like them breaking kind of, and them like being like, I don't know what to do. You know, like just kind of like, hey editor, like this is where you were supposed to cut. You
like
know, like
when they're in the cars talking to each other,
Yes,
you can see them like hiding smiles. Yeah.
yeah,
You're
like
yeah.
you've exhausted them. This is where
Yeah,
you're supposed
this
to
is too
cut,
far.
and you found like the gold. It's like, make a cut, man. Like,
It seems like there was probably a lot of like funny inserts and improv lines from every take,
Yeah.
and they took the funniest one from every take and inserted them and made this like super cut of like almost like a blooper of a movie where it's just like,
No, that is what it
here's
looks
the
like.
one line that
Yeah.
Kevin Hart said on set this take that made the crew like bust up laughing, and then we're gonna take all 5 of those and put them
put them all in a row.
Yeah. Hey guys, everyone loves the blooper reel on the DVDs.
and that's why
What
Kevin
if
Hart
that's
is
a
listed
movie?
as a writer on this movie.
Kevin Hart's new sizzle reel is great in theaters, yo.
Just sends this movie out for auditions. This is everything I can do.
Oh man, and it is because they're both. It's fucking shitty that I didn't know that this was the director of Girls Trip until I started doing notes for this. But that is shitty because it was like, man, like I did not think Tiffany. I was like, what is the big deal about Tiffany Haddish? Like, I watched the SNL episode and I watched the yada yada and all these public appearances that she's making. I don't get it, kind of. And then I watched Girls Trip and I was like, yeah.
All in.
She's like the woman of the moment
Yeah.
right now. She's really funny. And then I watched this, and I can't be too hard on her because she's playing the straight man in this film,
Which
even
she
though-
really shouldn't. Why give her that part? I felt like everybody was too good for this movie. Every single person was too good for this movie. And
It is a-
especially, like, why is she not being funny? She's the funny one.
It is a really great cast.
Yeah.
in this
It's a
movie. You know,
Yes.
like everyone in here has had at some point in their career a like seriously funny movie
Yeah.
or moment, you know. And not all, and like it's not like anyone is like underperforming here as well. I
No.
think I put most of the blame on the script.
Yeah.
And sadly, the director as well for not like, you know, sort of having the wherewithal
Some sort
to
of
kill
vision.
his darlings in some of these and be like, yeah, that Kevin Hart scene was really funny on set, but that maybe literally is just a blooper reel scene, and we can only take 2 of these really funny lines that they say back and forth.
Right. Oh man, I thought who was the guy who was sitting in the back that was like the woke conspiracy theorist?
Oh, Jalen?
Yes, yeah.
He was in
Jalen. He was in
40-Year-Old Virgin, yeah.
Yes.
So good in both.
I thought his character really actually works, and
He was
like
my favorite part of the movie.
I thought they wasted like a lot. They didn't waste. They just. I felt like they funneled a ton of like really great lines to him. It's like everybody kind of tried to play off him, and it wasn't working. He just had like this really rich kind of like I could actually see that character. Like it was just kind of like, oh, he's the guy who works. He's already made like really good money at whatever, like maybe some sort of factory job that took care of him, that had some sort of a union kind of, and he's just like that weird guy who's like, I don't know, man. Have you seen Terminator? Like, they're coming for us, kind of, you know. It's just,
I have a conspiracy theorist at my work.
right? Yeah, everybody has
You
that
have
guy.
it. You know that guy.
Yeah, And I thought that was like one of the more original takes on just kind of like, it's the housewife, and it's like the troubled teen, and then it goes like a tier lower, and it's kind of like, now we're just in stereotypes.
Yeah.
Territory.
He delivered his
Yeah.
line so much better than everybody else did that you felt like he was that character, whereas everybody else
Right.
was like, I'm being this character. I hate my kids. Ha, just kidding. Like, yeah.
I did like the mom character though, just
really-
in terms of her performance.
Yeah.
Like again, it's a bit of a stereotype, and they did do some weird stuff. Like I wasn't a fan of the whole arc with her husband, where like, oh, like the solution to abuse is to just stand up to her abuser.
No.
Like, that's some sensitive territory to get into there.
It
But I
took
thought
me a little longer than I wanted to realize that arc was about like abuse.
Yeah.
Like I was
Yeah.
like, oh no, this is a lot more serious than we should be treating.
Yeah, that really made it way too comedic for what it was.
It treated it a little bit light.
Yeah.
But just in terms of her comedic performance, I thought
She's really
she
good.
probably had
Yeah.
the most laughs of the whole movie for me, even if like some of her lines were a little stereotypical. I don't know, like this movie.
She really dug in on that butt bit.
Yeah,
But it worked. I mean, she's a great physical actress as well. Like she was really selling. Like
Yeah.
when she's on the dance floor, like trying to do like the twerking thing was working. Her like trying to flirt with Taran Killam, I thought was pretty funny. Again, like there's a lot of parts in this movie that are working, and there's equal parts that are just not working. Like I think like the character that wants to be like the Justin Bieber singer, who half of the time is like a Mexican stereotype, and it's offensive and it's cheap and lazy. But then like the other half is like he's great in the scene at the restaurant, and then the insertion of him at night school is a great tool in the script to be like,
when the camera pans to him, you're like oh
him
shit.
recognizing someone at night school and being
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's the guy that I made him lose his job because I pulled my pubes out. Like,
Right.
you know, like that's solid screenwriting in there. You know, it works. But this movie is so confused. It's like in the middle of being a good and bad movie the entire time.
The whole time, yeah.
And it starts out, I think, pretty strong. Like I remember seeing the first scene, laughing. They have one weird line that makes me cringe and is offensive, where they're talking about like at the very end of that scene, whatever his sister name, he's like, oh, she's dating a Chinese person or something like that.
Oh,
And
is
it's
that what the line was? I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's weird. It's
Yeah.
it's getting into some racial history there that's a little weird to approach.
I really
and film in
liked
that way.
the styling of the early 2000s with the giant clothes, the FUBU,
Yeah.
the Tommy Hilfiger, the
something-
Outcast, so fresh, so
There's
clean.
There's something. Oh, that's another thing. I think most of the soundtrack in this movie is just old. I think because it's cheap. Because even when they're in present day and they're at the dance, it's like
Polaroid picture.
like Lil Jon or Usher's like playing like all these songs like these are all probably
Or like when
the
he's-
cheapest pop songs you can get right now.
Yeah, it's funny because they like
There's no like Drake or like Migos or anything playing. There's nothing current.
because he runs out of like the SATs and then it cuts forward to like him in his like Porsche with like his new beautiful wife and everything that he wanted or whatever, and they're like singing a song from like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I forget
Everything was
exactly. Yeah, it was just
They're
like
just listening to throwback jams on
right,
Sirius.
I think they tried to make this movie as cheap as possible.
For sure.
I don't know if that had to
I
do
think
with
the
a lack of
budget
faith in
said
it.
like 500,000. I think.
yeah,
to
they
make this.
didn't have a huge budget,
The
but
budget says 29 million, so part of that
Jesus
might
Christ.
be advertising and stuff.
I think
like
it's
that.
not-
$20
that's
million
not big,
for
though.
Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you have Tiffany Haddish, you have
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Hart, you have there's a lot of other people in it too. But I forgot what I was gonna say. I thought it just looked really cheap in the kind of flashback scene. Kevin
Yeah.
Hart was wearing like what you would pick up at Party Warehouse as like
The wig.
as cornrows kind
Yeah.
of. It was
There
like
was-
you couldn't see like his
There was
scalp,
no scalp.
kind of.
But-
It was
but-
just kind of like a cluster.
I
of
think there was
cornrows.
something. I think that's supposed to be part of the
Yeah,
humor. Like,
I
I think
think
there's
that's-
something knowing about that. It's like I think it's almost like them being like, wouldn't it be funny if I just played a high schooler?
Yeah.
right.
At like 40 years old.
No, there's definitely that, but I was like, there's something more.
But then
I
that
could
humor
do.
doesn't play again ever. Like they're never playing wigs for laughs again, except for that
Yeah.
first scene.
But I think the theme or the through line of that is that this movie it's really just like it's them creating this movie, having fun, and being like, if this makes me laugh, then that's good enough for the big screen. Because there's like the scene where he like walks into the bedroom, and it's like a poorly established theme that doesn't really get followed through, where like his girlfriend wants to have sex with him and he can't because he's at night school. So he comes home and she's asleep already and she's in like the lingerie and he's staring at her ass. And then they have like the cutout of Tiffany Haddish's face that comes up, and it's like, it's weird, it's cheesy, it's like a dated like editing technique from like, you know, 90s comedies pretty much. But it just seems like something that probably made Kevin Hart laugh, and he was like, yeah, put that in, that's got to be in there, that's hilarious,
right?
And not really thinking about like what's current, what's relevant, what is like funny now.
Yeah, it really was like a lot of inside jokes strung together to make a movie.
Yeah, I wish I liked. Wait, was Taran Killam the principal?
Yeah,
right.
He was good.
I liked him a lot. I don't know. This almost feels offensive for me to say, but I feel like he should have leaned more into like the black voice when they wanted him to do it. Because it was kind of like, was that a black voice? Like he was saying things that could have been said in a black voice, but it wasn't really a black. I was just kind of like,
no, I thought it worked because he played up his like white voice whenever he was talking as you know, just himself as the principal. He would be very much like, oh, you know, students, you need to do whatever, and I'd be like, this my house. Like he did it pretty well, I thought. My theater I was in loved it every time I did it. And I thought it wasn't overused. They did it like 4 or 5 times. It was a different line every time.
Right. Without being offensive, though, I think he could have like really oversold it. I think he could have really done, I don't know, and I don't know if that's offensive to like really. I mean, you're already doing something called black voice. I think like lean into it, kind of, where he was just kind of like, "This is my house," you know, like it was just kind of like, go into it, man. Like if you're going to be the person in modern America who's a white guy who wants to be a black guy, impersonate that guy, you know, like as opposed to kind of like doing this safe impression. I don't know.
I thought it was alright because I don't know, and maybe it's just not within his total comedy wheelhouse,
right? Yeah,
to pull that off. But I thought he did alright. I mean, he does like there's like this like expression that he puts on where like even before he starts speaking, you're like, oh no, he's gonna do the black voice.
I really
like the theater that I was in would pick up on those cues immediately and be like, oh, here it comes.
The Lean on Me poster behind him, and then that was the bat in the case. But I was like, Lean on Me is definitely 45 years old. Nobody's getting this reference except movie nerds. Like, who is this joke for? Yeah, I liked it, but...
I had the best theater. It was like just the greatest spread of people. I heard people literally being like, oh, that's a Lean on Me poster.
Yeah. I really wanted him to play more into the Lean on Me role than they let him do. Again, with the same with the black voice. Like,
there's more of that character they could have done, yes. That character could have been a lot more funny. I think like
I still thought it was. I feel like it's probably the best thing he's done since SNL though, because he's been in so much where I've been like, oh man, like you were the best part of SNL when you were on it. You know, you were great at playing these characters, and I feel like he's been cast in a lot of roles where he's either playing the straight man, which he's not great at. He's a zany actor, and he does like doing like creating characters, and they haven't really let him be that sort of supporting comedic character.
SNL curse.
Yeah.
That's like Fred Armisen is like in some new show now. I forget what it's called.
Him and Maya Rudolph. I think.
Like Forever or whatever, and he's playing like a dental hygienist, and he's
hygienist. You mean?
Oh, he's playing a dental hygienist, and. And he's supposed to be playing like a really, really like straight, kind of boring man, and it's impossible.
Yeah,
it's truly impossible. Like he looks like he's a bad actor because of like
he could just be looking like straight at you, not smiling, and you're laughing. Like he's like
I'm a normal guy.
Yeah,
you're just like
you can't be normal.
No,
you can't do that after like 7 seasons of Portlandia.
No,
right? Yeah, because every like
after we've
little
seen
thing,
him with like when he plays like the metal guy with like the gauges in.
Because like Maya Rudolph is fine. She can play that like really straight faced, and then he's just like, yes, me too. I am also normal.
Yeah, whenever I see the advertisements for that, I feel like I'm like, oh, is this a commercial for Portlandia? Is this another character?
But no, I think the time that I laughed the hardest with Taran Killam is when the housewife is kind of trying to pull the whole butt thing on him or whatever, and he's like, he like obviously looks very uncomfortable about it, but then he shuts the door to his office and he's like, oh, she wanted you, Stuart. Could have tapped that ass, Stuart. That was just like such a funny break, and that's what I wanted the black voice to be more like. Just kind of like, I'm in my own world, and like nobody judges me.
There
here.
could have been more of that. Of it was the secret, like that's who he wants to be.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Because there was also no comedic core to the black voice either. It was just kind of like
if they had
was he
had
friends
him,
with Kevin Hart and wanted to be like him?
Well, there is
like,
that sort of.
Well, he's jealous in high school, but I feel like if they had him also wearing a FUBU sweatshirt in the beginning, and he wants to be Kevin Hart, then it kind of makes sense. But he clearly hated him in high school, so it doesn't really make sense that he does a black voice.
Or like they could have had a scene of him as an adult, and they catch him somewhere outside of school. You know, rather than having everything take place at school, there could have been something where they catch him outside of school, and he's dressed like a little bit more, you know,
he's
like
at a
urban
hip hop
or something.
concert.
Yeah, he's at a rap concert or something.
Or they make a point to be like, oh, this is a predominantly like African American school or something, and he wants to like kind of like, you know, he wants to kind of like level with these kids.
Yeah.
So black voice, like his black voice doesn't totally make sense with the character that he is, who's the guy who beats the baseball bat on like the lockers, kind of. Like it's a weird
I think it sort
mesh.
of makes sense because of the connection they make later when, I mean, sort of spoiler territory for a movie that's not really a spoiler movie. Spoiler, he graduates night school.
What? I didn't see it coming.
But when he meets him up with him in the Christian Chicken parking lot and sort of has his like big reveal of like, you know, like I was jealous of you in high school and you had everything that I wanted that I couldn't have and could never have. And like that sort of makes sense with the black voice to me, you know.
Right.
Like, Kevin Hart being this like popular, funny kid in school who just happens to not be good at actual academics.
Learning.
That makes
and that's
more
all
sense,
that Taron Killam's character has. And even though he gets to become the principal, he still inside wants to be essentially who Kevin Hart was. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes more sense.
Could have been better developed for sure.
Yeah.
Sort of like the reverse of that. I think one of the funniest times I laughed is when at the like barbecue place where like the owner comes out and is like you know, like, oh, like I'm gonna like give the company up to you when I retire, and Kevin Hart does his like white voice where he's like, "You kidding me, Joe?"
Yeah, that guy was such a real like that was such like a realist casting where it was kind of like the barbecue like owner or whatever.
Yeah.
He just looked like a real fucking,
which makes it work because it's Kevin Hart playing off of him.
Right? Yes.
The fact
They
that
just went
that guy
to a
considers
barbecue
Kevin
store.
Hart like his son.
Yes. Don't you have a son? Like, yeah. Have you seen him? Like,
He can't sell a grill.
right, yeah.
You're the son I wish I had.
Yeah.
He's the son I have.
I liked that. I don't know. I like, again, there are themes in this that I really love. It's kind of like this whole living beyond your means to impress a girl who's out of your league, kind of. And I like that.
We all relate to it.
They don't follow. They lose that. Like the minute he goes in the
there,
night school.
like ethereally, just because the movie concept exists, but it's not something that they really explore. I was really waiting for like a sort of sit down sentimental scene of like it really doesn't matter how much money you make, you know, like because I think at its core, this movie also has a lot to do with like masculinity, because a big deal for him is like paying for the check and not letting like her pay for the check. And at its core, what is that?
It felt very outdated as well, because like,
definitely.
Who doesn't? You go back and forth on the check. Like that's what you do in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because you just share cards. Like it doesn't make any sense. You're both old. You're not 20.
And like, I mean,
Right,
that's even fine if you start off the movie with he's wrong about this. He hasn't seen the light about this, and then that's his character arc. Is he understands that like, you know, it's not about like who pays for the check. It's about this connection we have, and you know, I can have your back in other ways and stuff like that. that felt underdeveloped to me, despite like the general concept of the movie relating.
Yeah,
to me.
I really like that theme, and I was really hoping they did something with it, and they really don't. It was just kind of like the whole thing where I thought there was going to be more conflict with the fiance when she kind of like approaches him where, he walks in and she kind of like turns on the lamp, like that old trope.
Yeah.
I don't even really know what conclusion they come to where
She
would
thinks
she accuse
that
of
he
him?
has cold feet. Why
Okay.
would you not think he was cheating?
Right. That's where I thought
I feel like
she
it must
was
have been
going.
something personal where Kevin Hart was like, look, I've been caught cheating before. Let's do something different.
Oh,
Let's-
yeah, I forgot about that. Let's not do cheating.
Let's say I don't want to get... I'm getting cold feet about getting married, even though this makes no sense at all.
But because then why does he? I mean, we're sort of in spoiler territory again.
We've already reached spoiler territory.
But when
I
they're-
think the
when they're
trailer spoils it, honestly.
Yeah,
You
when they're-
know
oh,
what's
Oh
gonna
yeah, you
happen.
could watch some extended trailers and get the whole movie if you want, guys.
when they're at the prom later, and he's sort of having the heart to heart with Tiffany Haddish, and she's kind of like having this like real sincere heart to heart with him, and he's kind of like, yeah, so we've got this chemistry going on, and clearly like you want something to do with me, and she's like, oh, I'm gay. Again, another example of like I think it was like a dated thing where they thought they were being current because they're like, oh, we have a gay character in here, even though we never get to see her date anyone, never see her with
she never
anyone.
has anybody
and her
around.
being gay is only meant to be a like punchline to rebuke Kevin Hart coming on to her.
Yeah.
Like that's offensive to me a little bit.
For sure.
But then also like it seems weird to have a Kevin Hart movie where like the core of the movie is that he cares so much about the girl that he's with, his fiance, that he's willing to, go to night school and do all the stuff that he doesn't want to do so that he can maintain a lifestyle that, she has become accustomed to because she is more well off than he. But then like just randomly in like the middle of the movie, he's just kind of like, well, let me hit on this teacher for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, and then we never come back to that. And it only ends because she's gay and she rebukes him in that scene.
That's
Like,
the only
that
reason
seems
that a
dated and
woman
ill-advised
wouldn't
to
want
me.
Kevin Hart is what they're getting at.
Exactly. And that also seems like the cheating thing that you were
Yeah.
saying, where it's kind of like, oh, Kevin Hart's a writer. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, hey guys, maybe we don't say that I'm cheating because I've cheated on almost every wife I've had at this point. And then also, like, the only way that this character isn't attracted to me is, oh, she's gay.
Yeah.
Like, logically. like, kind of like...
Look, everyone,
Right,
all the ladies in class are going to be flirting with me so hard
Right,
because
yeah.
I'm Kevin Hart, but they can't have me. They're all gay. Like,
yeah, that was weird. I don't know why they decided to go in that direction.
another thing, it just didn't make sense.
No.
That they
it
probably
didn't.
thought was really funny in the moment for them, and it just didn't play well.
And they probably thought it was like
They were probably
progressive at some
cracking
point
up
too.
on set too, yeah.
But yeah.
The other part of the dance scene that didn't make sense is his fiance showing up at prom to tour the school for a redesign. You wouldn't come any other night? You came to the prom?
Well, he does specifically schedule it at night, but you would
But
you
then
would think that the principal wouldn't
the-
schedule it prom night because just
the-
as principal he has to be overseeing the prom.
But the
Like,
principal is
But also-
surprised that the night school kids are coming to class and tries
the
to
principal's also
he
like,
tries to kick them
don't
out.
come in here.
Yeah.
And then like later he's like, haha, so
gotcha.
here. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I could have done without them going to prom altogether. Because it
Altogether.
was like, why are they going to prom if they're not going to do the whole like dressing up?
And they brought
like,
booze.
They didn't.
Like,
They didn't do it as the straight up like like old people at prom trying to like relive their youth type thing. And the rest of the movie isn't like like real high school, but we're just adults. The rest of the movie is just straight up night school. It's working people going to class at night.
You know whose delivery is terrible in this movie and is actually like a really funny character on paper is Fat Joe, who's doing like the Skyped in like prisoner. And I love and I do love like that one scene that they show in the trailer all the time, where he's about to be like
Shivved.
like like shanked or shivved or whatever, and then he turns around and like fucking like is like stomping their fucking heads, and then turns back around, and then soon he's like, I want you to teach me the Python. And I was just like, oh man, what a fucking terrible
A waste of something that
punchline.
could have been
It was
funny.
just, they could have had somebody really funny there.
They had a really terrible insert after that scene where like that scene's long gone. They go on to something else, and then the Justin Bieber character is like, are we just gonna gloss over the fact that someone just got like
that
prison shanked
did not
or whatever?
need to be said.
Right,
In fact,
yeah.
ruined the joke.
I mean, they used it to end that scene. I think that's literally the last. So it was they thought it was like a button for that scene, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it did seem a lot of these scenes were kind of like, all right, now we turn the camera on this person, and they're gonna do like their own fucking sizzle reel, and we're just gonna cut whatever, you know.
I also thought, like, for a movie that again has such a great cast, and most of them are performing up to their billing, someone that was really underutilized. The actor's name is escaping me right now. He's Jean-Ralphio on
Ben
Schwartz.
Ben Schwartz, yeah.
I got so excited when he was on screen.
He's so good at playing like a like zany character, especially like Jean-Ralphio, or like if you've ever listened to his like improv comedy and all, it's way out there and it's great. And then they have him playing like the sort of the straight best friend to Kevin Hart, being like, oh man, like you need to get your stuff together. And he's still funny because he's Ben Schwartz, but like sorely underutilized in a major motion picture.
He's definitely somebody who I was what's it called? I've said this to you before, but like on from College Humor, the website, Jake and Amir have like a podcast, and it's called If I Were You, and it's like an advice podcast or whatever. They have he's like a regular guest, Ben Schwartz or whatever, but they were doing like this one bit, and it went on for so long, and it was just anytime they were trying to say something, like he would just plug like an upcoming project that he had, and it went on for 20 minutes because he had so many. He is involved. Like if you look at his IMDb page, it's fucking like it's like
so long.
It's 20 or 30 things long just for this year, kind of. He's in every animated show possible, like Ninja Turtles, you know, the DuckTales remake. I mean, it's like this. He has to just
Sonic,
right? He's just involved in anything he can be. I don't think he's even considering like. I don't even think people are considering like his strengths, where they're just kind of like, yeah, sure, he's hot right now. Just put him, I don't know, fucking best friend role, kind of.
He definitely could have been better as another character in the class. Give him his own backstory. Let him be funny.
But I think he's just taking
also like
whatever.
Let him be the prisoner.
The way he's playing it is kind of not necessarily shy, but like nerdy, like the nerdy kid who made out well. Where like being on Wall Street's not really the place for that. Wall Street's like a bro place. So cast like a bro in that role.
Put Zac
and
Efron
then
in there.
he can be the nerdy kid in night school, and like give him like a compelling backstory for like why is the really smart kid in night school? You know, like why did he not get his GED or his diploma?
Set off a flare gun in his locker, I think.
This movie's still really bad, though.
Yeah, it's so bad.
This is bad.
Like it starts off so well that like there's the good. Literally just, I think the first 50% of this movie, I was like, okay, I did not expect to like this at all. And I'm consistently laughing. And then it just starts to feel like really lazy and go downhill. And then some of the offensive stuff starts to like really pile on towards the end. Like especially with that like flirting with Tiffany Haddish scene. And a bunch of other stuff.
There's like a vomit gag in there and a falling off the roof gag.
That roof scene was
bad.
like another example of like, again, like I think it was just them on set having a really good time, being like, yeah, that was really funny on set. That's got to be in the movie. Where like that should have been like 2 minutes tops. Not even
20 minutes
like
20 minutes long.
Like they get to the roof and all right, we have to jump, you know, whatever, and then the Rob Riggle character jumps and he falls, and that's it.
And like they were up there so long, I thought for sure the principal was going to be behind them when they turned around. Nothing. Nope. Just cuts away. Who knows how they got off the roof?
Yeah, because they don't even
never
finish
show
with the
it.
rest of them jumping. him falling is the button to that scene, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, the bits are so long. Like, this movie, the original cut for this movie had to be like 24 hours long.
Oh, for sure.
And they had to be like, oh
Kevin
man,
Hart was like, it's all gold, keep it all.
Yeah, man, it's confounding how this movie was made.
But again, the thing is that like everyone in my theater loved it.
Loved
every second of it. Like again, it's not like the stuff that they kept in there isn't funny. It's just isn't at the best.
It just doesn't make a
interest of
movie.
this movie. Yeah. Is it the best way to make a movie, or is it just a bunch of funny takes and really funny performances thrown together for 2 hours?
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. There's a lot of scenes that could have been cut down, and I'm sure, I don't know. Again, maybe these are the only scenes that they shot, and it was like an hour and a half movie. I don't know. This film felt like 2 hours.
It felt for like 5 hours
to
long.
me. But I feel like it was like an hour and a half movie, and they were just kind of like, we got so many funny back and forths. Like, why don't we just keep them all in here? Kind of like it felt like it could have been like a tighter movie in my opinion.
A good 88-minute movie.
Yeah, it is just so long, and it's so like, where are we going with this? It's just kind of I don't.
And everybody knows what the story is gonna be.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even matter what you put on, like, but make it make sense a little bit. We all know he's gonna graduate night school. We know it.
Again, there's just, Girls Trip has so much like soul, like, kind of in it. There's just so many aspects of life that are represented in this movie, kind of, and it's just kind of like, God, like it's friendship and love and independence and defining yourself as a human and everything. It's just kind of to go from that to night school is just kind of like, ay. It's a
jump.
Yeah.
It was also somewhat offensive to me in this movie. Was like offensive like as a screenwriter and offensive as just a human being. The resolution that they saw fit for Kevin being diagnosed with
the learning disabilities.
all these different learning disabilities. Like, I'm fine with him being diagnosed with this in a movie. Like, obviously representation is always great, and but like they turned it into this like really like trying to be humorous scene as he's getting diagnosed with everything, and there's all these punchlines they're throwing in there.
We'll beat it out of him.
And then the solution is get in the ring, and Tiffany Haddish, who is not really this like character of like, oh, like I'm gonna like beat everybody up, like, but it turns into like a scene from like Entourage, like the movie, the scene from Entourage, the movie with like Turtle in there against Ronda Rousey. Like, it's not really the same dynamic, so like comedically it's just not great.
And they show
and then it's offensive to think that like, oh, like the way to teach somebody who has like dyslexia and whatever the other thing that he says, dyscalculia and all that stuff, is to make them fear physical pain. Like,
and they show her teaching a special education class, so she knows how to teach it.
And she's teaching it in a sensitive way there. She's putting like activities that are engaging. They're doing poker rather than just doing like straight math and stuff like that. Like, talk to an actual like special ed teacher and find out some real tactics. Throw a little bit of heart into this movie, and have a scene where they actually bond.
They study.
Have us like believe that like Kevin Hart would be like, we do have chemistry. Now I'm gonna hit on you if you want to have that weird hitting on scene in there.
That would have made sense if they're one-on-one.
She's been like
tutoring.
rebuking him at every turn, and she literally beats his ass in the ring. Like, I don't know why he thought that would be like a funny scene to
Guys,
insert.
you know what's really hot right now? Like MMA. It'll be so fun. It'll play so well, and then I'll fart on you. It'll be so funny.
Even the fart, like the scenes in this movie are too long, but even the takes are too long.
Too
the
long.
farting take was like, it's like Kevin Hart is a good actor. He knows how to keep playing out a take and like squeeze the most juice out of it. So in that take, he is funny despite it being a weak and lazy comedic concept.
Lazy.
And he's physically great, so he's playing it out. But he's like, when they keep the whole take
just
in there in the
lingers
edit,
for 10 minutes.
it's bad.
Yeah,
because like clearly he's not getting away as fast as realistically you could, because he's trying to play it up for comedy. But they keep the entirety of him like not rolling away in there and being like, oh, it smells so bad.
Yeah.
She farted.
It is. It's like we're watching like a rough cut of. It's like watching. Yeah, it's like a rough cut. It's like something that we haven't edited for comedic purposes yet. That we've just kind of put together to be like, all right, this is what we have so far. Now we need to decide where we need to cut it to make it like a comedic kind of cut. It's like it's almost like the editors are kind of trying to like humiliate like Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish, like kind of like it's just it made me feel uncomfortable the entire time, like how unprofessional it was. It was just again that was more offensive to me than like the actual politically offensive stuff in this movie. I was just kind of like,
writing was really
this
offensive.
movie. Yeah, the way that this movie was constructed or put together was so bad that it's just like such a huge glare compared to I don't know, the things that are off color.
We're all dumber for having watched it, type of thing.
Yeah, it's weird. It's just it is like especially since you've brought up like the kind of I still haven't watched the Entourage movie, but the Ronda Rousey and like turtle like moment like that was funny in that trailer where she's like
trailer scene.
Like if you make it around 2, I'll like sleep with you. Kind of. And he's kind of like, okay. And then like, whoa, she's like, wait, she's going to fucking murder me kind of thing.
Oh my God, women are strong.
Right. It's funny in the Entourage hypermasculinity world, kind of. This doesn't work in any world, kind of, where it's kind of like, what? It's like that. If I had to see that trailer one more time, it makes me cringe every time. It's kind of like, what's the square root of 62? Bam! It's just kind of like, I don't know. I like my theater like laughed at everything.
Every single
nobody laughed at that. That was like kind of like what? Who thought this was funny? It was weird.
And they don't establish her as tough, a fighter, karate,
somebody
nothing.
who's like physically dominant. Kind of. It was just weird.
It seemed like they just either they had the budget for it or they just wanted another set piece or location.
Or Kevin Hart trains with The Rock and he's like, guys, I want to show off that I train and I have muscles now. Everyone look at my biceps.
Or it's just kind of like, oh, it's slapstick humor. We need more of that in here.
I think they did need another set piece or another location, but I don't think that was the right way to do it. Because it did, after a while, it was like, all right, we've been in this class.
Could have used a library. Like
library, they could have all gone to a bar or something like that.
Why were they stealing the fucking...
Been, like, they needed also some, like, because everything was them versus the teacher, and it was bad that all of the people in the class were failing. Like there should have been grades. There should have been a smart kid in there, and there should have been some like inter-student drama going on.
Yes,
there could have been them all getting involved in their lives in a way that they maybe shouldn't have, or too much.
And like the Mexican guy is immediately friends with Kevin Hart, even though he got him fired. But now he's like, we're
best
cool.
Friend.
Yeah, you're my best friend now. We're gonna steal tests because that's what 16-year-olds do. Like,
I gotta come down on the stealing the test bit because this class is ultimately about it's about passing the GED and they're trying to steal like a practice test answer sheet and it doesn't make any sense about why they would risk like their it's so like it would make more sense if it was kind of like we gotta steal the answers to the SAT or like the GET or whatever. And it's like, no, we got to steal the answer list to the fake GED that the teacher has made for us that really doesn't matter to anything. This course doesn't have any credits or anything. It's just
you just have to pass at the end. That's it.
Yeah,
the midterm doesn't matter.
Confusing. Yeah, I didn't totally get how that was a big conflict.
I also thought like the movie wasn't willing to commit to sentiment even when it like fell into its lap, because like they have the one scene where they're all kind of like denying like, oh, like we didn't steal the test, and then she's like, all right, well, like you're all gonna fail, you're all of you get out of here. And then Kevin Hart is like, I did it, like I stole the test. And there's this kind of like sentiment that
feels real and natural, where you almost start to feel like someone tugging on your heartstrings. Like,
Right.
Oh, like he's maturing, he's manning up, he's willing to
Right.
take the fall. He sees that, like, like for him, it's maybe not as important as it is for all these other people. And, he can, take it again or deal with it again. And then, like, immediately in that scene, she's, she responds to it and she's like, oh, like that, I appreciate the honesty, and then you can get out. And then he's kind of like, oh, I didn't see it going that way.
Yeah.
And they immediately return to the humor, and it's like they're not willing to dwell on that sentimentality.
Yeah,
at
like
all.
show him being sad for a couple weeks,
Yeah.
maybe, and then she finally lets him back in class, and he has to catch up.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Oh boy,
so bad.
this movie.
It is funny though. I laughed
There
so
was a
much in
couple
this
funny,
movie.
like the Christian chicken was funny.
That was. I was surprised that Boss never makes like.
He made one appearance.
The manager never
Yeah.
makes another appearance, and they have like 3, 4, 5 other scenes at that
they
location.
celebrate at Christian Chicken after their graduation. Like,
Yeah, or him outside,
Yeah.
or like
when
there's
the
like
principal
I
catches
did like
him.
the prayer scene.
Yes.
Because there was some humor in there that reminded me of not entirely, but like elements of like Tim and Eric, where like a lot of Tim and Eric humor is like they're the only characters that can talk, and they're surrounded by characters that are strange in some way, but they don't have any lines and they don't respond to dialogue.
Yeah.
Like I like a lot of that prayer circle where he's like, shouting at them and being like, what the hell? Like oh my
Yeah.
hands or whatever,
Yeah.
and they don't say anything back. Like there's some really funny scenes in that whole scenario there that work.
yeah,
But
underutilized.
yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
I just like the concept too of Christian chicken.
Christian Chicken, yeah.
Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
All right, you guys ready to get in some ratings?
Sure.
Let's
For
do
this?
it.
Let me get the Rotten Tomatoes pulled up. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 29% based on 89 reviews.
That's it.
A low amount of reviews for
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes. I guess it just
Yeah.
came out this weekend,
Yeah.
so maybe there's more to come. With an average rating of 4.4
I feel
out
like
of 10.
people don't want to admit how bad it is.
Yeah. The website's critical consensus reads, Night School's funny stars and seemingly promising setup add up to a disappointingly scattershot comedy whose laughs are largely held in detention.
Rotten Tomatoes, you dog.
Oh, the wit.
Oh,
They should
man.
write the Night School sequel.
Yeah.
They should write Night School. What's it called? I did see we are recording this. When did this come out?
It came out Thursday.
Friday, yeah.
Oh.
This weekend, so
Yeah.
Thursday for the early release.
Okay. What's it called? I saw that at least on Friday, it was. I think it's going to be number 1 for the weekend.
Yeah, there's nothing else out, really.
Well,
Smallfoot, but they won't compete with it.
there's Smallfoot and I think the house.
Hellfest comes out. right?
Hellfest, yeah.
What is did the house with a clock on its walls
House
come
on the
out?
Clock,
It was
yeah.
last weekend,
Oh, was that last weekend? Oh, okay.
I think. Maybe 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it was last weekend. Simple Favor was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. But anyway, yeah, this and Smallfoot opened, and Night School had like 9.5 million, and then Smallfoot had 6.5 million, and Night School opened at 3,000 theaters, and Smallfoot opened at like 4,100 theaters.
The 9.5 was for the Thursday previews, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's not for the weekend. For the weekend, it's projected like
Well, no,
25
yeah.
to 30.
Oh, it said Friday for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I was just glad that it was Friday estimates. I'm glad that it was like outperforming Smallfoot because
Which I saw one trailer for, and I saw infinite trailers for Night School. It had to.
Zendaya is Michi.
yes, it just I'm so glad that this outperformed Smallfoot because A, we didn't want to fucking review that, and B, it just looks fucking stupid. And I'm glad, Night School's not good. But it looks a lot better than Smallfoot.
I think it brought more joy to people than Smallfoot
Yes,
is going to bring. Again, there's people in my theater that could not stop talking about, like, man, that was good. That was really good. Like, I'm really glad we came to see that. Whereas, like, I think the kids that are going to drag their parents to see Smallfoot, they're not going to care. Like, even if they have a good time, like, they're just going to be like, okay.
Won't remember it
I
at all.
would have liked anything that we saw.
I'm a kid, I'm an idiot.
Right. Yeah, there's like there's a story on Box Office Mojo that says Night School set for 26 million plus opening, and Smallfoot targets 23 million plus. So I don't know. I'm sick of fucking animated movies dominating the box office. I'm glad. I guess I'm glad like something like Night School can I don't know, overcome.
Be up there, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get into some ratings.
I think I can go first.
All right.
Like I've said, I enjoyed like most of the first half of this movie, and I laughed a lot. Like this is one of the funnier movies I've seen this year, and we've seen a decent amount of comedies between Game Night, Blockers, and we saw some other movies that were not meant to be comedies, but were more like Ant-Man was pretty funny this year, and
Predator.
Eighth grade. Predator funny for the wrong reason. Check out a review 2 weeks ago. But like I've said, there's a lot of problematic stuff in terms of just
So much.
no attention to detail in the screenplay, not really being careful with the themes of this movie, and then just offensive stuff that is sort of dated. And I don't know, Kevin Hart has been in, I would think, enough movies where he should be smarter than this by now. And
Yeah, for sure.
you know, like
should be smarter than this.
But
Kevin.
like take a clue, like take a page out of like The Rock's book. If you've been in enough movies with The Rock, like play it safer on some of this stuff. And, you know, like I could have given this a much higher score if there weren't lines that made me go like, okay, oh, like that's not cool anymore, and like we're beyond that. So I think I'm gonna give it 2.5 fingers. Like I think this could have been like a 3 and a 3.5 if it wasn't as offensive as it was at times, and if maybe they just didn't totally bungle the end of this movie, because it is just seriously funny. I laughed so much at this movie. I had a pleasant time watching it. So I'll split the baby. I'll put it down the middle for me. 2.5 fingers.
Very cool. I'll go next. Yeah, I feel like I've said everything I wanted to say about this movie. I honestly kind of had higher hopes for this movie because I do like Kevin Hart. And I don't know if I'd think differently of him if he wasn't from like Philly or something. I'm all about him. I like his whole, I don't know, even if he wasn't from Philly, I'd just be like, I like this. Like he's funny.
It's very charismatic.
You're right. Yeah. He's the person I want to, has he like hosted SNL yet? I really want to see.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because he's just so funny on his feet. He's just naturally funny person. And just, it's so funny because it's like, he doesn't have funny stand-up, but he makes it work. Like he can't write good stand-up, but it's still really funny. And that's such a bizarre thing.
He's like the guy that would be funny at a party, but everyone's like, yeah, you should do stand-up. But he's actually so like talented as a performer that he can make these party jokes sort of work.
Right. He can make offensive jokes really funny for like me, you know? Like it's just, it's
you laugh and then you feel bad that you're laughing.
You're just kind of like, at its core, this joke is really problematic. But Kevin Hart's delivering it, and it's funny, kind of. So I'm always kind of in his corner, and I don't know. I don't know if I've seen any other movies with him. What else has he done, really? I feel like we didn't even talk about that.
Central Intelligence.
Okay, I did see that.
It was a
Jumanji.
stinker as well. Jumanji was not the worst.
He's done a lot, and I feel like I haven't seen...
I mean, I got introduced to him in Scary Movie 4 or 3 or 4.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's 3. 3, the one with Charlie Sheen, where he's like the hype man for the like Eminem character.
Yeah.
Him and Anthony Anderson.
I kind of forgot how long he's been around. He's really been like, he's been grinding. Yeah, I don't know. Just such a big fan of him. And again, I've really come around on Tiffany Haddish and everything. And this movie was overall it was kind of a big disappointment. Especially after we've seen, again, Game Night and Blockers, both of which I thought were really funny. I feel like I haven't talked about this on the podcast, but there's the package on Netflix is extremely funny. Like the funniest movie I'd probably seen this year so far. It's made by the guy. It's made by the guys that who did like Workaholics. They had their own movie too, Game Over, on Netflix, which was kind of funny. But yeah, this movie falls flat in a lot of places. I was surrounded by a bunch of people who were laughing, but I was also surrounded by a bunch of people who I could also be like just real normie kind of people also being like, really? Kind of like this sense of disappointment and like, man, if these guys are disappointed, I should be devastated, like kind of like, and I was, and I don't know, I still, you can probably still have a good time at this movie. This is the only movie where I'd be like, I don't know, if you think this movie looks good, then fucking go see it. It reminds me of
the stakes feel really low for this movie. I think is why a lot of people enjoyed it.
Well, it's and it's not the first of these movies that we've seen. It reminds me of kind of like, remember when like Fist Fight came out and it was like Ice Cube and like Charlie Day or something, and it was kind of like, God, I like stumbled across like a few scenes of that on like YouTube the other day, like when I was just on like some sort of weird shuffle, and I was like, Jesus, this movie looks like a nightmare. Like, it's so bad and it's so thrown together. And again, it's kind of like the same thing where it's kind of like, I don't know, we rented out of school for 15 days in Atlanta. And it's kind of like, whatever we come out with, we're just going to kind of cut it around and we're going to release it. And then people are going to see the big names and be like, yeah, I want to see Ice Cube fight Charlie Day. And it's like, and we have all these other side characters and all these other people kind of trying to make a paycheck. It's just like one of those movies who are just kind of, it's just kind of like studios that are just kind of like,
they found out how cheap it is to rent a school, and they're like, write a movie around it.
It's gonna make money, I guess.
They've been doing it in TV as well, like Vice Principals.
Oh,
I don't know if that got canceled yet.
They only did 2 seasons, I think, on purpose. I think they only wrote it to be 2 seasons.
Oh, okay. And then they did like AP Bio, which is actually seriously funny.
That is really funny. Way funnier than the commercials make it look.
Yeah. It's Patton Oswalt and Dennis from It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
Very funny. But it's starting to get to be this like tired theme of like adults in a school setting where it's just kind of like shitty adults in a school setting, kind of
kicking
like
off with
bad
like
Santa with
Community
with
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Where it was like, hey guys, remember Community was really funny?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm gonna land at like a 1.5 for this movie.
Sounds good. Cass, what about you?
I really did not like this movie at all. It was really terrible. It was hard to watch. It was probably the worst movie I've seen in the theaters, besides another movie that was a sci-fi movie that came out recently.
That we maybe reviewed 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, maybe you guys reviewed it 2 weeks ago, and the review is on point. If nobody listened to it, go listen to it. So it's really good. It's a good episode. But it's definitely, I would not have gone to see it in the theaters, and I probably wouldn't have seen it even on Netflix. I would have passed it over because the trailers don't even look good. Like, they don't even hook you in the trailers. Like, if you can't cut a good trailer, it's not going to be a good movie. Right. And it was all over the place, and everybody in it was way too good for it. Tiffany Haddish is too good. All the side characters are way too good. Kevin Hart is fine, whatever. I'm not a huge fan. I don't know. I would say nobody go see it. That's all. And
that's fair. Yeah.
Like, it's just bad. I can't even think of anything good about it. Besides a couple, one
Yeah.
or two jokes.
Uh-huh.
And then so much offensive stuff.
Right.
That
yeah.
it feels like it was made in 2002 more than 2018.
Right, yeah.
I would give it a one for me, 1 fingers.
Right, so that'll come to 1.6 repeating, so 1.5 fingers for Night School here on the podcast.
Probably the highest marks for a Kevin Hart movie.
Yeah, I can't. I don't think we've ever done a Kevin Hart movie, but
Yeah, I mean, he's got like Ride Along.
Oof.
all the ride-alongs.
They did Ride Along too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done one. I haven't
I
seen
can't think
too
of
many
anything good that he's
besides-
ever been in, which is a shame because he is charismatic. He is likable for some reason. I don't want to like him, but he is likable.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of a terrible person, but then you're like, oh, he's funny sometimes.
Well, the thing is, I don't know. There's a difference between... I don't know. There's a difference between being funny and being a leading man.
Yeah,
You know, where
for
it's
sure.
kind of like Kevin Hart was... I mean, again, like Mike was talking about, like the Vine era. Like during the Vine era, like the only comedian, like Kevin Hart was like the Dane Cook of like that
Yeah.
era. Like that's all like, no, he didn't, whatever that bit was.
Yeah.
Like that's all I heard kind of. And it was kind of like, obviously like a bunch of studios jumped on that and they were like, he's a fucking leading man. People know this guy.
Yeah.
And, it's just kind of like he doesn't need to be involved in good comedic movies. He can kind of just be in whatever and still get like a
It's kind of like
huge
when
paycheck.
the YouTube stars try and make the transition to being a regular star and it doesn't pay off.
Yeah.
Well, it is also kind of like now there are Kevin Hart vehicles where now it's the movie is getting made because we need a movie for
Yeah.
Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
necessarily like, oh, is Kevin Hart the best person for this role?
Right.
Like this role was written for Kevin Hart to play, clearly.
He wrote it for himself.
Again,
Guys, I'm writing it and I'm starring.
when 4 of the 6 like people sitting down to write this movie are Kevin Hart and 3 of his like people from the Kevin Hart camp are kind of like what's a funny place where I can kind of
Guys, do you
It's just-
remember-
it's picking a location for Kevin Hart to be Kevin Hart.
Remember
We'll pick
Billy
stereotypical
Madison?
character.
yes.
What if I
That
was
was
the
a funny
black Billy
movie.
Madison?
Yes. No, exactly.
And if he had just remade Billy Madison, it probably would have been funny.
Again, we've talked about this so much, but comedy is in such a weird place
It really
right
is.
now in film.
Nobody
Like,
wants
there's
to do...
great TV comedies
Yeah.
always going on, I think. Like especially like Veep right now, I think is at like the top
Veep
of
is
its
the best.
game.
So
There's a lot
good.
of other really funny comedies going on right now. But like comedy and movies, like
Yeah.
I feel like this...
what's the trend besides making bad comedy
the
movies
studios feel like they have to make things stupider for the audience,
Oh, definitely.
but there's no reason to. The audience likes smart humor. Like, they watch all the TV shows that are smart humor.
now? Yeah.
Give them that.
yeah.
And I know Judd Apatow, when we reviewed Game Night, he had his theory about like, well, all the good writers are in TV because that's where the money is, and
Right.
that's where the actual good concepts are. And now movies, like we've said, have turned into write a movie around Kevin Hart.
Right.
Get whoever you can who's willing to write this movie. It doesn't matter if it's
It's also a lot harder to make a movie that's not a huge... We're going to make $600 million. Like, we're not going to give you money if we're not going to make $600 million.
You're right. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, no one's really taking risks on comedy concepts now. It's half of the budget is going to be the star that we're going to put in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, there's no high concept.
We'll fill it out with whoever is sort of hot in comedy right now and underpay them.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you agree or disagree, leave a comment below on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook,
If there's
Twitter.
anybody that disagrees and thinks this is a really good movie, I want to know.
love to hear
I want
from
to
you.
know. If you're the person going 4 times in the opening weekend, I want to know.
If you're that person walking out being like, one more, please.
Anyone from my theater, please comment. on
Listen,
this
I just got
episode.
out of the 7 p.m. showing. Is there? How
Sign
can
me
I
up
get
for more.
into the 10 p.m. showing? Yeah. I'll wait in the movie theater lobby. I just gotta see Night School again.
I'm going back to school.
I need to repeat night school.
People kept. I feel like I kept trying to remember what the title of this film was, and I kept forgetting.
I think I kept calling it Back to School, and I was like, no, that is not Back to School.
I don't know what I kept calling it, but I kept calling it different things, and I was like, that is not what it's called. I'm like,
Kevin
what
Hart
are you going to
University.
go see? Oh, what did you see last night? And I was like, the school night.
School night.
I don't know what I was calling it. It was just, yeah.
Oh boy. So let's do some last plugs. Where can we find Nuclear Heat Podcast?
Nuclearheat.com, at Constable Cass, at Nuclear Heat Pod. Those are on Twitter, Instagram, Nuclear Heat Podcast, and same with Facebook.
Nice.
And go listen because we're really funny.
Yes.
Specifically
Yeah.
me. I am really funny. I carry the whole show. It started out as Rob's podcast and I kind of took it over. So it's now mine. I think I'm going to kick him off eventually. I'm going to get 2 new hosts. Tim and Mike are gone. So look for a revamp in a couple weeks. It's going to get even better.
So listen to our episode Predator with Rob Goodman, former co-host of Nuclear Heat,
Former co-host.
2 weeks ago.
He hasn't heard about it yet.
And for us, as always, you can find everything at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. Anything else, I'm sure Joe will cover in the intro. And that's about it for us. Thanks so much for coming on.
Nice,
This was
thank you.
awesome. And for
for
driving
joining
2
us.
hours up here to be on our podcast. And bringing this delicious beer that we were drinking. Thank you so much.
Our motto is drink beer, watch wrestling.
Hell yeah. Drink beer, watch movies.
Watch movies.
Watch
Works
Kevin
well.
Hart in bad movies.
Cool. Drink beer, don't watch Kevin Hart.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Later.